Hello there, math friends. Today we are going to be taking a look at integers when exponents are involved. And so let's start off first of all by explaining about the parts of an exponent situation. Okay? So what you see here is 5 with a little 3 up there. And so, first of all, that little 3, when we're talking about exponents, that little 3 is the exponent. Okay? And then the 5 has a name, and that's called the base. Now, when we take a look at this, what we are actually seeing here, this is called, when you read this, you would read this as 5 raised to the power of 3. The power of 3. And what does that even mean? 5 raised to the power of 3. Well, we take the base, the 5, and that means that we are going to multiply it by itself 3 different times. Not 5 times 3, okay? It is not 5 times 3, okay? Definitely not. But it is 5 times 5 times 5. And so when we do this, 5 times 5 is 25. And then we multiply by the third 5 again. And so 25 times 5 is 125. So 5 raised to the power of 3 is 5 times 5 times 5, which is 125. Now, what happens when we bring in the idea of integers into the mix? So, for example, what if we had negative 3? We'll put that in parentheses like that. What if we had negative 3 to the second power, or negative 3 raised, negative 3 raised to the power of 2? What does that mean? Well, just like in the previous example, that means we are going to be multiplying negative 3 times negative 3. And if you remember, a negative multiplied by a negative is going to be a positive. Remember, a negative times a negative is going to be equal to a positive. And so negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, positive 9. Okay? But what happens if we take that same negative 3 and we multiply by the power of 3? Raise it to the power of 3. Well, then that means that it's going to be negative 3 multiplied by negative 3 multiplied by negative 3 yet again. And so when we do that, well, negative 3 times negative 3 we already know is positive 9. And then we're going to multiply that times the next negative 3. And we know that a positive multiplied by a negative is going to be a negative. Positive times negative will always equal a negative. And so also then 9 times 3 is 27, so that'll be negative 27. So negative 3 raised to the power of 3 is negative 27. Okay? Now, what I'd like you to do is to pause the video and fill out this table. Will you end up with a positive or negative result when you multiply each of these or raise them to the power that the exponent indicates? So we have negative 2 raised to the power of 2, negative 2 raised to the power of 3, negative 2 raised to the power of 4, and so on. What would the sign of the result be? Go ahead and pause the video, draw the table, fill it in, and then start the video again when you're sure you have completed it. Okay. All right. Well, you should have determined that negative 2 times negative 2 would be a positive result. Negative 2 to the third power, that would be 3 negatives multiplied together will give you a negative. Negative 2 to the fourth power would be 4 negatives multiplied together, and that would give us a positive result. Negative 2 to the fifth power, that would give you a negative result. And negative 2 to the sixth power would give you a positive result. So, there you have it. So, what you should see here is that when you are dealing with negative integers raised to a power for the exponent, if you have an even exponent, then the result will be, as we can see here, by 2 and 4 and 6 as even numbered exponents, we get a positive result. And when there is an odd exponent, then the result will be negative, just like when you were multiplying other integers together before. So, always remember, make sure you write this down, when a negative integer is in parentheses and raised to a power, the negative integer, that negative integer is raised to the power. So, for example, negative 3 to the power of 2 is negative 3 times negative 3, and that's positive 9. Or, like before, negative 3 to the power of 3 is negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. And we determined that that was negative 27. However, in the next paragraph it says, if there are no parentheses surrounding the base, and a negative sign is in front of the base, the negative number is first raised to the power, then the negative sign is placed in front. What does that mean? Okay, well, let me show you what I mean by that. When we do this, for example, what if I have something like that? Now, that isn't negative 3 to the power of 2. That's the opposite of 3 to the power of 2. And so what that means is that is the opposite of 3 times 3. And 3 times 3 is 9, but the opposite of 9 is negative 9. Okay? And then if we had that same situation, but we had raised it to the third power, that is actually the opposite of 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27, but then we're looking at the opposite of 27 because of that negative symbol that's in front of that. Okay? So, another thing to consider is that if you see this, where you have the negative sign and no parentheses around the whole thing, that's also the same as the negative sign, and then you put that 3 inside the parentheses, like that. Or, negative 3, the opposite of 3 raised to the third power, that's the same thing as saying the opposite of 3, and you could put the 3 in parentheses and raise that to the third power. That's the same. These are the same, but they are definitely different than what you see here. Here it's negative 3 raised to a power, and this is the opposite of 3 raised to a power. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is take a minute, copy down this table, and then fill in the results. You can work with a friend, or you can do it by yourself. The choice is up to you. Just pause the video and then work on your answer. All right. Okay, now that you've had time to complete this, let's take a look at our results. This is the opposite of 4 to the second power. So that would be negative 16. The next one is negative 4 to the second power. So that's negative 4 times negative 4. And negative times negative is positive. Positive 16. Here we have the opposite of 2 to the fourth power. And 2 to the fourth power is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. But this is saying the opposite of 2 to the fourth power. So that's the opposite of 16. This one is negative 2 to the fourth power. So remember, that's negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. All those negatives, that's going to be a positive because there are 4 negative integers. Okay? Negative 5 to the second power is positive 25 because that's negative 5 times negative 5. This one is the opposite of 5 to the second power, so that's going to be the opposite of 25, which is negative 25. Now you'll notice that this one is written where the negative sign is outside the parentheses. That is still 4 to the second power, which is 16, but that negative sign says it's the opposite of that, which is negative 16. And the next one is 5 to the second power, but it's the opposite of that. 5 to the second power is 25. The opposite of 25 is negative 25. And there you have it. Okay, well, I hope that shines some light on integers with exponents. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to have a great day, and don't forget to be awesome.